What is the difference between ADHD management and ADHD mastery? And how do we go from ADHD management to ADHD mastery? Well, keep watching because this video is for you if you're new to ADHD, you're finding out that you've got it, and you're wondering what lies ahead, or if you know you have ADHD, you've been diagnosed and so on, and you're wondering how to kind of progress forward even more with your ADHD journey. Now, I've been using these terms, ADHD management, ADHD mastery, for many, many years, ever since I started working as an ADHD coach. And I'm decided it would be good to share with you what I really mean by those terms and have a little think about that. And it also provides a kind of a roadmap for those that are new to ADHD, or indeed those that know they have ADHD for quite some time and are wondering about how to progress forward even more on your ADHD journey. Now, ADHD management is, I think, the beginning of our journey. You know, we go from not knowing we have ADHD. It's like that saying that it's better to know than not knowing. So then you find out what it is. You're like, oh, I have ADHD. You get a diagnosis. For me, that was reading Driven to Distraction by Dr. Ratey and Halliwell years ago. And I was reading it, I was like, wow, this is me to a T. And I actually burst into tears because I felt like I was reading about my own life story. And I realized there's a name for what's going on with my brain. And then I got diagnosed. And then, of course, medication was part of that. I did do medication for some time. Today, I don't take medication, but it's normally part of most people's journey. So at the beginning, it's getting a diagnosis and medication. Now, most people with ADHD only ever go that far. They get a diagnosis and they get medication. And for many people, medication can be really, really helpful. Some people swear it's like the difference between night and day. Some people it helps to a certain extent. And still others, it may not work. The side effects may be unbearable. I knew one person that tried to find a medication that worked for like 10 years. When they found the one that worked for them, it was a really big transformation for them. So sometimes it's worth persisting, right? But getting a diagnosis and medication is not the end of the story. If you look at, and I learned this early on when I was like researching about ADHD when I first got diagnosed, that the optimal for someone with ADHD is not just to have a diagnosis and medication, but also therapy and lifestyle changes and mindset changes. A more of a holistic whole treatment plan is going to get even greater results and is optimal. And this is recommended for like NICE guidelines. And when I read the DSM-5 back then, it had those kind of guidelines in there. But the stark reality is that the vast majority of people with ADHD only go as far as taking medication. Like I say, medication's helpful, but there's so much more we can do. Rather than thinking of it as seeing the other things as an alternative, we should see them as a complement and all these things working together. And that's what brings us into the next stage of the journey, which is what I call ADHD mastery. Now, ADHD mastery is actually an ongoing process. And I think that's part of ADHD mastery itself, that we begin to change our mindset and realize that it is an ongoing process. So ADHD mastery is a continuation in some sense of ADHD management. First of all, we deepen our understanding of ADHD. We go past a basic understanding into a much deeper understanding of ADHD and our uniquely wired brains. Secondly, we come to understand that the process of moving through ADHD mastery into higher levels of progress with ADHD is that it's an holistic integrative approach that is optimal for ADHD. So what do I mean by holistic or integrative? Well, it means that we don't just rely upon medication. We are improving our understanding, what we would call psychoeducation. We are looking at our lifestyle factors such as exercise, whether we're getting enough daylight, whether we're getting a good diet, and so on and so forth. And we also look at mindset, which of course is where things like therapy or coaching or hypnosis come in. Do we have the right mindset with ADHD? One way I like to think about this is that we have a mind, a body, and a soul. You know, we're all aware that we need to exercise and feed our bodies, but we do also need to exercise and feed our minds. And so when we start to think of it like that, we start to have this, what I call a synergistic effect, that we are paying attention to our body, the physical dimension, but also the mental dimension. And what this does is it creates what I call synergy, which means we start to experience what I call the best of both worlds. There's some kind of interaction between mind and body, and we experience even greater results. Now, part of my own breakthrough with ADHD, back when I was 24 years old in 2024, was actually hearing Ken Wilber, a philosopher, talk about combining meditation with exercise. Now, I've been practicing meditation for years, and I had all sorts of I would practice meditation, but it didn't go particularly well, let's put it that way. But he was saying that when you do exercise with meditation, it takes it to a whole nother level. There's this kind of synergistic effect. And so I practiced that, and I was amazed because suddenly I found that if I exercised and then did meditation, that the meditation was much more profound. I was starting to experience more of what we call mindfulness, being more aware, being more conscious, being more focused. It was like the exercise got my brain switched on so that I was able to concentrate and relax. Now, as a practical example of how I apply this when I'm working with clients, for example, I would be working with a client that said that they had started to take up exercise, but I remember a client taking up exercise but still wanted to watch television, so they got themselves an exercise treadmill, and so they started to use their treadmill, but they were also doing meditation. And I said, when do you do your meditation? They said, well, first thing I get up, I do my meditation, which kind of makes sense. You know, you've just got up, so you kind of start off slowly. But when it comes to ADHD, it's actually better to get stimulation early on. And I said, just as an experiment, what might happen if you maybe did it the other way around? That's exactly what they did. They did their exercise first, followed by the meditation. And what most people with ADHD will report is that they get much better results when they do their exercise first, followed by that relaxing practice like meditation. Now, this is a principle that I call tweaking. It's just about moving things around into a different order and just making these small little changes, changing the order of your routines and therapies that you're engaged in can make a massive difference. Now, a helpful analogy that I like to use is to think of this like baking a cake. You see, if you bake a cake, you have all the different things going on, right? You have the temperature, you have the ingredients. You could bake the cake and it could rise, but it might not taste sweet enough. You could put it on too high a temperature and burn it. Or it could taste right, but not right. So there's all these different possible outcomes, right? And with ADHD, it's like that. Think of it like a proprietary blend or recipe for your own particular success. And that is different for each individual. And it's also different, the kind of approach that you want to take to treating ADHD. So it's not a one size fits all. It's a whole treatment plan that is suitable for each individual. And this can take some time, but when you find your own proprietary blend for success, this is part of how we get from ADHD management into ADHD mastery, and that process continuing into higher levels of ADHD mastery. Now, one of the areas that I mentioned was psychoeducation, or getting a deeper understanding of ADHD. So there's a few books I want to share with you that you might want to check out. I know if you've got ADHD, you might not be into reading books. You can get some kind of summaries of these books online. Or of course, you could get an audiobook or something like that. But it's definitely worth looking into this if you can. So the ones I recommend, one of the first books I ever read on ADHD was actually called Hunters in a Farmer's World by Tom Hartman. It's now called Attention Deficit Disorder, A Different Perception. And this is a really good book for changing the way we think about ADHD. This is probably one of the earliest books, I think, that started off this kind of whole neurodiversity movement. The idea that there's not something wrong with our brains. We don't just have damaged brains, but that we are just different. Okay, so this is a book I highly recommend to help you, and it's really helped a lot of people to reframe the way they think about ADHD in a more positive way. Secondly, for a deeper understanding of ADHD, I'd recommend ADHD 2.0 by our wonderful Dr. Halliwell and John Ratey. I think they're absolutely amazing. And this is a really practical book. It gets a lot of deeper understanding of ADHD, but it goes through kind of like relationship stuff and environment, which I think is really important, exercise and it goes through medication and how our brain works, and gives you some understanding, but it's also practical as well. It's really helpful, and I always recommend it to clients. And again, you can get a summary of this or as an audiobook. This if you can apply some of what you learn in here, it can make a really big difference to your life. Finally, I recommend this book, Finally Focused, by Dr. Greenblatt, MD, which is, he calls it the Breakthrough Natural Treatment Plan for ADHD. What I love about this book is that it's very holistic and integrative. This is a doctor that actually works with people and does prescribe medication to people with ADHD. But in this book, you can follow it yourself. Maybe you're an individual or you're a parent, and it's got sections for parents, and it guides you through different chapters for kind of like focus and your gut, so diet, which has a massive effect upon us, nutrients, and you know, testing that you might want to get to the root cause of what might be going on in your gut or your brain. And it also goes through some lifestyle things like sugar and what else, sleep, and all sorts of wonderful stuff there. It's really a good book. And again, it's one that I often recommend to clients to read and go through alongside coaching when they work with me, so that we can work in a more holistic and integrative way. Anyway, just some of the books I recommend. Please do check them out. I hope that you found today's video helpful, and it's given you a bit of a roadmap of your journey from ADHD management into ADHD mastery, which, remember, is a journey, is a process, and is ongoing. And if you'd like any help with that journey, maybe you're moving into ADHD management, I'm here to help. Maybe you want to move into mastery, and coaching and hypnotherapy could really help you to get to the next level. Anyway, you've been listening to me, Jamie Vasilian, the Hypnosis for ADHD Specialist. Bye for now.